So this section coming up now is how to use AI to create commercial quality games, and we will be back later after this, but hang on to your hats because this is a gorgeous session.
Hello and welcome to this webinar where we want to talk about artificial intelligence and how you can use it to build really great 3D applications and 3D games. At first, we try to figure out the question, what does a 3D application really requires? And how Delphi, C++ Builder, Gorilla3D and AI can help you. Because most of us are programmers and not able to manage all of the things in a 3D application, or there's just a little time to do a new application or building an application. So AI can really help you a lot solve some of those tasks. I will show you how to generate different assets with AI, and we're going to integrate all of those assets in a small app using Gorilla3D and Delphi. My name is Berger. I'm the founder of Gorilla Software and the developer of Gorilla3D framework. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at eric@gorilla3d.de. I will answer them as soon as possible. But first things first, the 3D scenes shown afterwards are highly dependent on the hardware and performance of your device. This presentation is done on a laptop with a dedicated RTX 4070 card. And the demo you will see in a few minutes is available at the GitLab repository. To compile that demo, you need an installed Gorilla3D package, and you can do this by our installer tool via the Embarcadero Get Package Manager or by manual installation. You will find some instructions on that in our documentation. When working on a laptop, and running on battery power and energy saving settings, take care, this might reduce performance a lot. And if you're working on a virtual machine, you need to have activated GPU pass-through to a real physical graphics card with at least OpenGL 4.3. Let's start with the question, what does a 3D application require? The first and most important thing is a good idea. Usually simpler is better. And once you have figured out an idea, you have to choose a development environment and programming language to implement your idea and finally build your application. Besides those programming skills, you will also need skills in a lot of topics. So you need to know how to do 2D graphics for UI design, textures, icons, and whatever. You need to know how to build a 3D model or character, to texture it, to animate it. And when building a 3D game, music would be nice, so you need to know how to compose music, record audio samples. And telling a good story is also not easy. You have to know a lot about narrative design. So how should I even manage all of that? And the answer is Delphi, C++ Builder, Gorilla3D, and AI can help you a lot with that. You can use AI to ask for a good idea. And this is what I did for this webinar. It recommended to me, hey, how about building a small app where a boy talks to a robot and asking questions about AI? And I got a step further and even built the complete 3D characters with AI. And also, the dialogues and translations and speech files were generated with AI in this demo you will see in a few minutes. Because this is a webinar with Embarcadero and Gorilla3D, I chose Delphi to build this application. And as many of you know, there are meanwhile a lot of AI features included in the IDE. So you can generate source code, you can fix source code, and you write documentations with AI. To combine the assets we have generated with AI and to put it into our Delphi application, Gorilla3D comes in place. It helps you to integrate all sorts of assets, so for models, audio, images, and helps you to build a 3D application with much less code. So even if you're a single developer or having a small team, this will help to save money and time. So what is Gorilla3D FireMonkey add-on framework? Basically, it's an extension for the FireMonkey components library, and it works since Delphi 10.1 and C++ Builder 11.3. We do support multiple platforms for Windows, Android, and lately also Linux, thanks to Embarcadero, and the macOS and iOS Metal support is under development. It provides runtime and design time features, so you can design your scene in the IDE, you can edit things with the object inspector, manipulate materials, and even write shaders at design time. But still, it's not a 3D engine as some of you might expect. I will still call it a framework because it's more basic and it has its advantages, so you can easily integrate Gorilla3D in your existing applications and add 3D power to your application. Getting back to our demo application, where we now have the idea of a boy talking to a robot, and we're now going to need 3D models to represent our idea. So we're going to create this with AI. And for this webinar, I've tested out a few platforms available. So especially here, I chose Meshy AI and Hyper3D AI, also called Rodin AI, because they offer partially free options to generate models. But there is also another one, the Hanjuan 3D model, which you can install on your local machine by using Python, PyTorch, and CUDA. And there's even a Blender add-on available. So when we're having a look at Meshy AI, what it does, you can use a text prompt or an image prompt to generate 3D models. And it will then generate 4 variations of a 3D model, and you can choose one of them to continue with texturing. And the advantage, as I said, of Meshy AI and Hyper3D AI is that you have a free amount of generations, which is calculated by coins. And when you do generation, when you do file downloading or texture application, this amount will reduce. But it's still worth mentioning now here, there are a few issues with AI-generated models. So sometimes they are messed up or imperfect. So it might happen, for example, that the arm is attached to the body or the leg and there's no space between, or there's a large number of unnecessary polygons and vertices, which might slow down 3D rendering. And I also had sometimes an issue with the exported files, which were defect, or they're not smooth shaded, so they had more a polygon-like look. And if you're unhappy with the results of AI generation, you can still go to classic archives with a high-quality 3D assets. I've listed a few ones here, so Sketchfab, Fab.com, and CGTrader are very popular and have millions of 3D models you can browse. AI model generation platforms also provide auto texturing and UV mapping function. So it will automatically generate textures suitable to your model and link those informations for you. Some of the platforms also support to generate physically based materials. So Hyper3D is able to do this. But there are still some issues with AI-generated textures. So sometimes the textures are not linked to the exported model, so you have to do post-processing work to fix that. And very often the textures generated by AI have tiny glitches in there, which are not perfect, but in general it's getting better and better, and yeah, it's just a matter of time. But in case you're not happy with the generated result, you can still work with classic texture archives and find the textures you really like, and you can draw them using tools like Blender, 3ds Max, Maya, and whatever is they're available. I've listed a few archives here for you and tools you can use to generate and find textures. Now that we have generated our models and textures, we can export them to a file format. The AI platforms like Meshi AI and Rodin AI offer various different file formats. Many of them are supported by Gorilla3D. So when we're having a look at that, you can choose the character, and going to the download section, we can find FBX format, OBJ, GLB, STL. All those are imported by Gorilla3D, and you can easily import them there. Rodin AI also offers FBX and OBJ format. So once we have now created our characters, it would be nice if we could bring more life to our demo application. So animating our characters would be really nice. Some of the AI platforms do support animations, so like Meshi AI provides functions to auto-rig and animate character models. Auto-rigging, for some of you that might not know what it is, you are going to put a bone skeleton structure inside of a 3D model and make it able to be animated. No. But because I was not happy with the result of AI-generated animations, I still chose a good old solution by using Mixamo.com, provided by Adobe, and it's a free platform. You just simply go there, you upload your FBX or OBJ file, and you can just simply place some points on there. Let's have a look at it. So I've uploaded my character, and you place some spots on the model, and it will automatically put bones inside of the 3D mesh. And then you can choose from hundreds of animations and apply them to the character. And once we have an animation we really like, we can start by downloading it. And we're starting by downloading the first animation with skin. So we want the model within animation and with a skin. And any further animation we're going to download without a skin. So we have separated animation files for each animation. There are also alternatives to Mixamo.com. There's also a free available version from Accurig, but there are also many paid parts in there. And you can still go with the classic tools like Blender for auto-rigging and animations. So now we once have downloaded our animated 3D models from Mixamo.com. Like I said before, Gorilla3D provides many formats to be imported from. And what it also does, it loads all materials and textures and link everything together to display it correctly. And we do provide a large set of materials, for example, normal mapping, splat mapping, physically based rendering, parallax occlusion mapping, and much more. And all those materials are inherited from a default material which produces shader code on a node base. So this means you can exchange and expand those structures and modify shaders in a very easy way. We also do provide a feature called material behaviors. This is used, for example, for wind, water caustics, or coloring your scene. So imagine it as a global setting, for example, for wind, where you set up the wind power, the direction, and whatever, and you can take this behavior and attach it to a specific material you like. So even a character could be affected by wind if you want. And of course, we did the way over Mixamo.com. Gorilla3D is able to also load animated models. We're able to load skin, skeleton, and vertex animations, and as you saw, we are able to load separated animation files. And once you load those animations, Gorilla3D tries to optimize those animations because they can be very granular, there can be very tiny parts of animations, so it tries to merge things as possible and to optimize the performance of the animation. Another optimization, which is optional, you can cache the whole animation inside the GPU, which increases rendering performance a lot. Currently, only FBX and Collada DAE format and our own G3D format are supported for animations. Since we now have talked a lot about how to do things and how to get things imported, let's have a look at our demo application I have prepared. So it's just a simple FireMonkey application, and I put a Gorilla viewport into it, placed 2 Gorilla models into it, and loaded our characters into. In the back, you will see there's a procedural skybox, of course, a light source, and there's also a room model in the back for just a simple background. And I already imported the models, but we can have a try again and do this so that you can see how the process is working. So we're going to choose our robot file, and we're starting with the file we have exported with the mesh and with the skin. So this one is quite bigger. The other ones are just the separated animation files. So we choose our main model, and we're adding our separated animation files. And we import them, and here we go. It's just imported with all the informations and all the animations, and that's completely stored in the formula file. So you can of course load it at runtime, but in our case here and for this presentation, all the model data, animations, textures, and so on are stored in the formula file itself. And as you can see on the formula, we already have here a component called dialog system and another component which is called fmod audio manager. Those components we will need to implement our conversation between the boy and the robot. So as I mentioned before, I even generated complete dialogues and speech files using AI. So what I did was I've uploaded an example file to a large language model like ChatGPT and Gemini, and it should also work for all the other ones, and gave them an additional instruction on how the internal format works. And the result was surprising. It generated the complete dialogue with questions and answers and multiple questions in a row, and even the events for playing back audio or switching animations, AI has prepared for me. So I could download the file and just import it, and it worked out of the box. But to display the dialogue itself in the application, you will need another component which you can create at runtime. It's a so-called head-up display, and it's responsible for taking your dialogue and displaying it as a visual feedback of the dialogue. Okay, let's switch back to our application, and I can show you the dialogue AI has designed for us. So you can open up the dialogue designer inside of the IDE, and you can choose the dialogue file AI has generated. It's an XML format inside with a different extension. And AI even generated the pattern position in our flowchart for us. And as you can see, it created a question with all the answers and following up questions with further answers and so on. It generates or prepared the events for playing back audio. In the dialogue designer, you have the option to play back different audio files depending on the language you're using. You can place timer events in there to do certain things like switching to an animation at a certain point of time. And yeah, it's a quite complex but powerful system, and you don't have to program any line of code. It's all controlled by those events and by the flowchart itself. So now that we have the dialogue with all the questions and answers and texts and translations and whatever, it would be nice to have a real audio output, and for this the Fmod audio manager comes in place. But for that we need some audio files, and I thought it would be nice to generate those too by AI. And this is what I did. I've tested out a few different platforms. Here you have a list of all of them. And for this demo application, I went with the Witnos AI, where I put just the text from the XML format inside and generated speech files from that. So you can download them as a WAV file or an MP3 file, and you can simply link them inside of the dialogue system. So we can have a look again at it. When we're switching here to some of those audio events, you just say which language is this, and you put in your file path, and it will automatically play back this file when the question starts. It will play back the audio file. Besides those components you already saw, like the dialogue designer, Gorilla3D provides a lot of more components for building games. So we do have inventory and skill system, we do have terrain rendering, procedural skybox rendering, cube map skyboxes also possible. We do have a fully customizable particle system. You can use mouse, keyboard, and gamepad input controlling for hotkey and sequence detection. You can control your characters with this input controller in first person, third person, and even with physics character controlling. You can have 3D points in your 3D world where you can react with specific actions onto it. So in case you're looking on a 3D point or you're getting close to a 3D point, this point is getting triggered and you can do certain actions on that. You can build a very powerful sound map to create your own sound environment and automatically play back sounds in a certain state or event. And we do support water surface rendering with waves and ripples. And as you already saw, the Fmod Audio Manager, which is a very powerful component for playing back audio, even with 3D sounds and 3D positioning of sounds in your world. We do support different physics engines and even the AAA game Jolt's physics engine. Besides that, we do also support rendering of MRT and CT scans, or in general, when you're having 3D data, the volumetric mesh rendering is perfect for you. And I know there are a lot of scripting components available for Delphi, but the Gorilla script is a good way to work with Gorilla3D. So if you want to do scripting, Gorilla script is a good choice for you. And in case you don't want to deliver thousands of files with your application, the assets package management is a really great component to pack all your assets into a single archive and just publish this file instead of thousands of files. And we do also support many popular effects like anti-aliasing, reflections, refractions, bloom effect. You can build your own After Effects. And this is all based on our very powerful rendering pipeline, which differs from the standard FMX pipeline. So we are using a more modern approach in rendering transparency, and you can expand this rendering pipeline with your own render paths. And of course, general features like fog rendering, color management, and tone mapping are available with Gorilla3D. But before we end up this webinar, let's have a look at our demo application we have here. So I know some of you might be curious how it looks like, so let's start it. And before we start, we have to choose a language, and I think we start with the English one. So, and after a second, the dialog will start automatically.
Hey robot, what is AI anyway?
A way for machines to pretend they're smart while secretly Googling everything.
Wait, you really Google stuff?
Oops. Ignore that. I totally knew everything already. Beep boop.
Hey robot, what is AI anyway?
Imagine your toaster had a PhD. That's AI. Sort of.
What? That sounds so terrifying.
Terrifyingly efficient toast. Ha 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 ha.
And we can have also a look on the translation. I've only translated it to German, so I'm sorry if you don't understand. But it's just for presentation, right?
Hey Robot, was ist KI überhaupt?
Künstliche Intelligenz. Es ist wie Gehirne, aber mit mehr Mathe und weniger Snacks.
Kann KI Videospiele spielen?
Ja. Und ich gewinne immer. Sogar bei Verstecken.
Das klingt wirklich unfair.
All right. So we can also have a look at the source code. And as I promised, you write much less source code with Gorilla3D. And as you can see, it's just around about 180 lines of code. And yeah, it's quite simple to build this kind of application. And so far, we now have reached the end of the webinar. I'd like to thank everybody for watching. And now we're going to switch to the Q&A session. But in the end, I want to show you some of the links, and you can have a look at our official website at gorilla3d.de. And you can download the developer edition for free, as I said, via the GitHub Get package manager or our installation tool. There's also a documentation available. There are precompiled demos in our download files section. And you can also download a GitLab repository on all the demos available. The application I've shown you, you can find, as I said, in the GitLab repository here. And there are also some open source projects. And if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to contact me, Eric, at gorilla3d.de. And at this point, I'd like to say thank you, everybody, and see you soon.
Excellent stuff. And the good news is we actually have Eric live in the studio. And let's turn him on and make sure that we can see me. There you go. Hi, Eric. How's it going?
How are you?
Yeah, very good. I'm always impressed by Germans because nearly every German that I come across speaks excellent English, and you're another example of exactly that. Your English is fantastic. My German, if I spent a lifetime learning it, would still sound horrible. So that was a really great demo. for those that were are going to ask, because a few people scanned the QR code that I've put up there over that way, I think. That goes to the site. We do a summary at the end of these presentations. They do. Hagop, who's one of our writers, does a blog post summarizing the day. So we'll try and make sure we extract your links as well, so that they're on that summary. If not, we'll probably ask you to give us a copy of the slides or something, so we can get the links as
They are
well.
online.
Yeah, there was a lot of links there. You're very comprehensive. Oh, look, you've got some people saying some nice things about you. That's a good stuff. Meltdown Shark Haven, who has the best handle ever. I love that. I'm hoping he's a gamer, because that's got to be a gamer handle, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And EC Code 6 says smooth animation and me love. I'm guessing that's what they mean. So that's good as well. And then XHS, thank you for an awesome presentation, Eric. So there you go. Bit of love from the viewers. Now, just to reiterate, you do. There's a couple of different versions of Gorilla 3D. If people go into Rad Studio and click on Get It, they can get the. Do we call it an Embarcadero version or developer version, or what do you officially call that?
Yes, it's a version for free to download.
Right.
It's a complete feature set, so you have all the functionality inside. The only thing is it has a watermark in the corner, but it's fully functional, so you can test everything, you can build your apps, you can try on. So the licensing says once you're going to publish something or sell something, you have to buy a commercial license. So I also posted the link of the online shop.
Yeah.
And then you need to buy a license. Until then, you're feel free to build your apps, ask questions on me.
Yeah, and they can go to that link there, because I've moved it now, so I can point to it, and they get the full version. And I remember when you first submitted, I think it was to Get It, and I'm one of the people that reviews Get It submissions, and we saw Gorilla 3D, and all of us were like, wow, this is amazing. I mean, you had a demo there, and it was just quite mind-bending what you can do. I think it's really impressive for us at Embarcadero what can be done, because as a 3D engine, it's great, but also the fact that you can visually program, I suppose that's the right word, or it's visually control the narrative of the story. And as you showed, even the AI translation of the text, once you've translated it, obviously, I mean, it support it. Am I right in saying if they produce an animation, did I understand it correctly that can then be multilingual? So they could have pick the narrative in German, pick the narrative in English, pick the narrative in Portuguese, for example. Is that right?
Yes. You control the dialogue multilingual, and you can play back audio depending on your language. You can switch to a different animation depending on your language. So because sometimes the words when you're speaking and you have an animation exactly onto lip synchronously, so it's better to have a German animation and an English animation and so on. So it's also possible to do switching of animation in multilingual. And there's also further event types, like setting properties, executing scripts, and so on. There's much more there.
Yeah, I've had lots of my code over the years translated into different languages, and I always remember that whatever size you've made a label or a text box in a Delphi program, if you did it in English, when you give it to Germany, you need to triple it, because it's Germans have words that are very challenging, shall we say, to fit into user interfaces. It's a very precise language, you know. I've seen words in German that are quite, you know, this is a soup spoon to use in hot soup or something. It's, you know, it seems like that's as precise as it gets. So yeah, I think that's a very important point to say. You know, if you see an animation that's very closely dubbed, and then all of a sudden it's in a different language, and the lips don't match. It's a little bit. It takes you out of the imaginary world that you're in, and that's a problem. Meltdown Sharkhaven, again, great name. Is there a maximum limit of dialogue for any NPCs if created with Gorilla 3D that can be generated with AI? I think that's
I'm not
kind of
sure if I understand the question. Is there any
so.
there?
What he's saying is there a maximum limit of dialogue for non-playable characters if they're created with Gorilla 3D, and then he says that can be generated with AI? I think he's kind of combining two things there, because the first question I would say is there a maximum limit of dialogue for non-playable characters?
No, there's not.
No.
The
And
short
the
answer.
second one would be that you generate with AI. Well, the more you generate with AI, the more it's going to cost you, and also, it depends on the number of tokens. So, yes and no. The answer is no if you're just generating dialogue. It doesn't matter whether it's generated with AI or you sit there and type it for 24 hours. There's no theoretical limit. And if you're doing it with AI, then yes. I mean, it's Andrew Spencer says, very neat. Things have come a long way since Game Maker. Are you familiar with Game Maker? I don't know.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess that I'm not a gamer myself, so I'm kind of out of my comfort zone when it comes to some of these things. Are there other use cases for Gorilla 3D besides games? For example, animations for using a video or a website?
Yeah, there are a lot of examples. So we do have, for example, rendering of MRT and CT scans, something like that. So more in the medical area. There's an easy to use component, so you can just load into those 3D data and will display by ray tracing the whole 3D scans, and you can rotate, you can scroll into or zoom into. That's a very popular use case. And there's also, let's say, some kind of design software, so you can use it for displaying generally displaying models, so something like step files, IGS, so architectural files. For that, we have, since the latest version, more import formats, so you can load up those things to build really modern and commercial applications. And yeah, of course, you can do you can build shaders and write shaders in the IDE at the same time, so you can see what is doing without starting the application.
Yeah. Is that the standard kind of shader language that you see out there, or is it a different type of shader? So like sphere shaders and things like that?
Yeah, currently it's GLSL by OpenGL.
Okay.
But as I said in the presentation, I'm also working on the metal support. So this language will also be the basis for metal shaders. So in future, I will have a converter that's going to take the shader code in GLSL and converts it completely for you to metal. So it's more like the Embarcadero Delphi approach, having one language building for all platforms,
Right.
or like Skia does it. Yes, and currently it's GLSL. Maybe someday I will expand it a little bit with more functionality, but currently it's just GLSL.
Yeah. When I was in the Delphi Summit last year in Amsterdam, a guy came up to me and he, I get a lot of people approach me and want to show me their programs. And he's like, Ian, I've got to show you this app I wrote. And he'd used FireMonkey 3D, which is kind of having problems at the moment. It needs some love, shall we say. And we're talking about various things that we can do. But he showed me this app, and he lived like I do. I live in an apartment block, a very large. It's a bit like living in a very upmarket hotel, but all your stuff is here. It's cool, But he lives in a similar place, and it's all smart home. So my place is a smart home. I can turn on the lights and the fans from an app, or just talk out loud, and it does it. But he had an app that used FireMonkey 3D, and he could control lights and corridor lights and things like that. And so he was using shaders to show where the beam would go. I don't know. That seemed to me like a bad idea, but it was very visual how he did it. And he said, you know, the people that live in the apartment wanted to be able, the apartment area wanted to be able to. He felt they could interact with that smart home more efficiently by looking at a graphic than having a thing that says turn house light on, turn up thermostat, you know, and I think that's true. But he had a specific bug, and I think that if he was to use Gorilla 3D, that would be another very good use case of how he could do things, because Gorilla 3D, they can interact with um, the things on the screen, right? I mean, you can, if you had a light switch in the game, you could click on the light switch. Is that right? That's
Yes. It's
Yeah.
basically it's still FireMonkey 3D under the hood,
Right.
but a lot of
To the
I went-
max, though, I think. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's on
But
steroids.
basically,
Yeah.
it's still many of the classes of FireMonkey 3D to be as compatible as possible. So you can still use your FireMonkey components. So, for example, an edit, a button, a color picker, or an animation indicator, and place it inside of your 3D scene. So you can potentially build your complete application environment inside the 3D space as 3D space.
So they can actually have controls inside the 3D space.
Yes.
That I didn't know that. That's
It also
I
works.
obviously
it also
wasn't
works,
paying attention at that point.
Yeah, it also works with the browser, so you can have 3D browsers.
Wow, that's insane. That's really good. I mean, you know, internally in the company, all the technical people, you know, like the project managers and that, they love your stuff. I mean, you know, we all like, wow, it's really good, and we've had, you know, some quite in-depth conversations about it, as you're aware, and or at least I hope you're aware. Meltdown Shark Haven says actually started, in fact, I am in fact a gamer and first started learning how to make basic 2D games with Game Maker Studio. Well done, yeah, good. Daniel Fernandez Gonzalez Pena says, Eric, thank you so much for your presentation. The topic is brilliant. It's worth digesting slowly, accompanied by a good cup of coffee. Well, there you go. I would say whatever you choose is great. And he also says, you make it look so easy, but you're sure to pave the way for those who want to get into this area of gaming. Well, I think here what I really like is your visual designer that is in the, you know, Gorilla 3D. I think it uses the idea a bit like uh, live bindings, but also a bit like OpenWire, which is Boyan's methodology as well, which is the idea of having these components and then drawing a connection between them. I think that's a great way. I mean, Sketch was a bit like that from Google, where you could literally plug in components. But I think as a way of designing, what I think is important about that is you're actually opening up really for people who are not quite as technical, you know, because by I think people who are maybe not computer science leaning, you know, are more likely to be able to understand how to use Gorilla 3D because they can see the blocks and draw the blocks together. They have to understand, you know, what a shader does or something like that, but at least then they can still drop that on, not need to understand, you know, what all the properties are and anything, as long as they can connect them together. So I think that's an important thing that you have in there, and that's kind of it's a major part of Gorilla 3D, isn't it? I mean,
Yes, of course. It was the intention to do things, to encapsulate things, and to make it easier, because diving into the 3D topic is just horrible. It's so
Yeah.
huge, and you wouldn't even know how to start. So
No,
encapsulating things and making things easier is difficult, but I think also it's the good way for people to get started. Yes, but for example, the input controller I mentioned. So worrying about oh God, how I mentioned keyboard mouse and gamepad. I don't even know how to contact those things. And so you just use this input controller component, and you can define hotkeys. And you say from which device that comes. And you can even combine things to, for example, sequences. So you can maybe in games like FIFA, with the football game, you have keyboard gamepad combinations to do certain tricks and something like that. So you can just simply place hotkeys and say, this is a sequence, and when the sequence is triggered, you do certain things by an action, and then you program the thing you really want. So
Sorry, my dog started barking in the background. Hopefully the noise cancelling cancelled him out, but you know how it is. I don't know what his problem is. Yeah, I mean, I don't think people realise sometimes the effort that goes into games design. A stepson from a previous marriage of mine, he actually worked for Microsoft Rare Games, and in fact, he's BAFTA award winning twice. He used to design the game engines and the game's physics, so I used to get some, you know, insight in what goes on, and he was a maths genius. You know, I mean, he's still alive. I'm speaking like he's dead. You know, he was a maths genius, still is. but all of those people, you know, the effort that goes into game design and game physics and game engines is phenomenal. You know, you think you're a good coder, and then you see someone who's, you know, like yourself, working on these things and making this stuff look easy to do. You know, the effort that you put into making it simple to use is not simple, and I really respect you for it, because Gorilla3D makes the difficult a lot easier. You know, I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much, Eric. I think this is the first time we've been on a webinar together, isn't it? I don't recall you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good job. And
Thanks.
you know, your use of AI, you made it clear that it's kind of a step into getting to the point where you can then use something rather than create a new game for me. He was good for prompting and giving you some you know, artistic prompts about what you could do with the game, but also helped you generate some of the content and models. But I like the fact that you said, you know, the arm might be stuck to a leg or something like that as well. This is it's an interesting perspective. You know, don't
Yeah.
trust it to do it perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. Even the dialogue generation was funny too. So as I said, it was very surprising how well it worked. But I've tested it a few times, so I can really say it works.
Yeah.
But it shows AI has a little bit of dark humor,
Yeah.
because the more often I
Boy.
did the generation, AI was generating texts, and the dialogue ended up mostly in destruction of humanity.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. And you're like, who
it's quite
taught
funny.
you this? Who hurt you? You know, it's like, what happened in your childhood? Wait, you're an AI. You didn't have one. Yeah, and I think also what's exciting as well is that we're only a couple of years into having usable AI.
Yes.
And wow, you know, what we can already do is mind blowing. And I think, you know, given another couple of years, it's going to be fascinating. We'll get whole movies generated by AI, and we'll sit there and love them because it will create exactly what we want to see. And sometimes it'll be horrible because what we actually want to see is not what we really should be seeing. It's, you know what I mean? Like a good movie or a good game is actually, sometimes it should be, oh, it took me in a different direction to what I was expecting, and that was a good thing. You know, but we shall see. You know, more creative AI is on the way, I'm sure. It's great stuff. Well, thanks a lot, Eric, and I will see you again another time. It won't be the last time we'll have you on, I guarantee it. But until then, thanks a
Yeah.
lot.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. That was Eric Berger from Gorilla3D, and a very good guy. I've seen his stuff a few times now, and it really is, you know, wonderful things, really. And AT says, I'm impressed at how to voce tone. So how the voice tone change. I was thinking it was Italian for a moment there. Change when changing dialogue languages. Yes, AI voice generation is quite impressive, really. So, you know, like I say, I think this is we're only a few years into having usable AI for once. and I think we're only really on the scratching the surface of what's going to happen. So good stuff.